was born in 1915 at my parents' farm home out of the city of Wahpeton in North Dakota. The southeast corner of North Dakota is where we lived. It was a good place to grow up because there was freedom to be out of doors a lot. There was good diet because my parents had a big garden and they also raised pigs and beef, so we had staples like that. We went to church in town, but didn't go to school there. We went to a one-room country school through 8th grade, and then into Wahpeton, our hometown, for high school. My sister was 2.5 years older than I. There was a second sister who had passed away as a child. I'm not sure if I remember her or I just remember about her, because of course my mother talked about her a lot. But I was only 4 when she died. Anyone who farmed during the Great Depression certainly had to be stoic just to endure, because there were several years in succession when there was insufficient rainfall during the growing season for the farmers to even hope for a good crop. So it took some, I can't use any better word than endurance, just to stay with farming during those difficult years when there was one season after the other with insufficient rainfall. Living through the Depression was hard for everybody. I think it probably made us a little shrewd in what we spent money for. When I started teaching for $55 a month. And we were beginning to climb out of the Great Depression by then. But it taught us to take care of what we had rather than casting it aside because we didn't like it. It taught us to be generous, because of course there were people who crossed our paths that had much less than we had. We always had enough to eat, and true, we wore hand-me-downs and so on, but we were always taken care of. And I think living through the Depression taught us to have a feeling for people that were less fortunate than we were. My mother sewed and managed to dress us in homemade clothes or hand-me-downs from people who were older or better off financially than we were. She was a hard worker. She rose early and worked late. She delighted in doing the outdoor things that a farm wife does, like caring for chickens and baby turkeys and that sort of thing. She cherished her own memories of having lived in that sod house for 2.5 years until it became her land. And it was during the time of listening to those stories that I wanted to do the pioneering thing of my era. And I did that by being in the service during World War II. I know there have always been women in the service to a degree, but not in thousands like there were of us during World War II. The word WAVES meant Women Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Service. And that's exactly what we did. We did things that women could do to free men to go into the bad part of being in the service. Any of the military lives are disciplined lives, of course, and that never bothered me one bit. We had a chance to indicate what we wanted to be trained for, and I succeeded in being trained to become a link trainer instructor. That was a whole new world for me. I mean, the world of flying was a new world for me, because we still ran out of the house before going into the Navy. If we ever heard an airplane, everybody ran out of the house and craned their necks until they could see it, because flying wasn't flying in the sense that we fly now. Just hadn't come to be yet at that time. Our students could fly by visual reference to the ground when they came to our department. We taught them to trust their instruments for totally instrument flight, rather than flight by visual reference to the ground.
Do you think you made your mother proud?
She never put it into words, but I think so. My husband was a farm boy, as I was a farm girl, and his family had lost their farm in the Depression, and we were close to it, and I think that was our bond to begin with. We sympathized with each other at seeing our parents suffer what the Depression did to farmers. I mean, it was really hard on farmers. His family went to the same church I did, so I knew him as a fellow member of the Congregational Church. We were just very casual friends until we both came home from having been in the service. And somehow there was some magic that just made us right for each other when we were back home together. Our wedding was in the same church that both of us had gone to all of our lives. Our wedding was on November 23rd, and November can be a pretty cold month in North Dakota, and it was bitterly cold. My sister was my attendant, and my niece was our flower girl, and the wedding was on a Sunday evening, and I had taught Sunday school that morning and had told all of the girls that were in my Sunday school class that they could come to our wedding. In fact, the whole congregation was invited, not formally like a wedding is usually done, but the whole congregation was invited, and I guess most of them were there. Teaching in a one-room country school means that you could have children of ages from 6 to 14. It took a lot of juggling your daily schedule to get everybody in for some time with you as a teacher during the day. I mean, you didn't ever have longer than 20 minutes for one class, you know. But being a country school teacher means that you also are janitor. You take care of the stove and bring in the coal when it needs it, and you also do the cleaning after the school day was over. Eventually, of course, I got into a graded school and taught a room full of fifth graders rather than a room full of all grades. The actual work probably didn't change a great deal. You corrected a lot of papers every night and worked into the night to be sure you were ready for the next day. And it was a rewarding career because the more of yourself you were willing to put into it, the better the results. If you were willing to work with a child who had trouble learning, until he found joy in it, you did something substantial for that child. My husband worked at a service station while we were going together, and his dream was to have his own business, and that's what brought us here to Minnesota. He saw an ad in one of the city papers for a service station that was for sale, and he said, let's go and take a look. So we came across the state and take a look at it, and he bought the station, and that's what brought us here. We were married in 47. We've been here since 49. Well, we weren't young when we married. I was past 30 and my husband was older than I, but we hoped I would become pregnant right away. And it didn't happen. So we adopted children. As it turned out, they were both of school age when we adopted them. They are biological sister and brothers, but Lee was in the 4th grade and Carol in the 2nd grade when we adopted them. It was challenging partly because they weren't babies, and some negative influence had already been wrought by the time they came to us. So we had some things that need to be undone before we could plant choices and ideas such as we hoped our children would have. My son did become a teacher. He taught his whole career in the Chisago system. The only constant is change. The modern communication is more than 100% different than it was when I was a child. We did have a little old machine to play records on, but we didn't have a radio until, I was a teenager when we finally got a radio. We never did have TV in my home.
What are you most proud of in the way that you've lived your life?
I don't think proud is the word. I think satisfied is the word rather than proud. I'm happy to have been a teacher. If I was going to choose again a life profession, I would want to be a teacher. Everything is so different. Sometimes I say or think, well, I'm not living in the same world that I was living in when I was a child, because life is so different. Not necessarily better, but different.
What advice would you give, or what would you tell a young woman?
A young woman? I simply don't know how to answer that. I would encourage her to get an education, because even if she marries young and thinks she doesn't need a formal education, she will need it to fit into the life that's ahead of her. I would encourage an education. I would encourage anybody to be a little daring as far as experience is concerned. Like if there is opportunity to travel, I'd say use that opportunity, because travel is broadening.